Hi everybody, this is my second video on intermittent conditioning or intermittent reinforcement, and I'd like to talk now about how intermittent schedules of conditioning can be a means of manipulation or sinister manipulation in young children. Now, let's say a narcissist parent wants to strengthen an antisocial behavior in their child. So, for example, if a child, right, is making fun of somebody or, bullying somebody, an easy way of strengthening that behavior is through the use of an intermittent reinforcement schedule. So, because the child sees the parent as a resource, physiologically and biochemically, they see them as a resource, a source of safety. They are programmed to listen to the narcissistic parent at all costs, because to not do so would be to not survive. So let's say it's the child of a narcissist, sees their parent bullying somebody, right? Or, disparaging their friend behind their back or whatever. The child is seeking the approval of the narcissistic parent. So, naturally, they're inclined to copy that behavior, that antisocial behavior, because they see that their parent is doing it. So let's say they go to school and they start making fun of somebody. And they come back home and they tell the narcissistic parent, guess what I did at school today? I made fun of Sarah and everybody laughed at her. Now, through the use of intermittent reinforcement, the narcissistic parent can strengthen this behavior. There are two options really. There's continuous reinforcement and intermittent conditioning. So, the narcissistic parent knows that continuous reinforcement of antisocial behavior is not as powerful and will not hijack the dopamine reward system, the flow of dopamine, as effectively as intermittent reinforcement. So what they will do is they will, one time they'll applaud the antisocial behavior, and the next time they will not applaud the antisocial behavior, and they'll actually reproach the child for bullying Sarah or somebody else. So let's say the child of the psychopath comes home and says, "Yay, I bullied Sarah, everybody laughed at her," and yada yada yada. They're waiting for their parent to give them feedback on that action. And if on the second time they bully somebody, the parent says, "I can't believe you did that. That's just so stupid. Like, you're not supposed to bully anybody. Come on. Like, I didn't teach you how to be that way." So, essentially, the child is conditioned to bully because they remember through a certain amount of trials, right, earlier, that they were rewarded for that behavior. And the intermittent schedule of giving them a reward and then not giving them a reward will make them try to seek out that reward, seek out that first feeling of euphoria that they had when their parent did praise them for the behavior, if that makes sense. So it's important to understand that psychopaths use these sorts of mind manipulation games where one time they reward you for certain things, and then the next time they do not reward you for the same exact action. And when you point out, make the point that, last time you were happy about this behavior, and now you're not happy about this behavior, this doesn't make any sense to me. If you try to point out the inconsistency of the reward system, even as a child, right? They will dismiss it outright. They'll be like, I can't believe, you're so stubborn. You complain about everything. Like, they will try to change the subject because, again, you're conditioned from a very young age to seek out their approval at all costs, biologically and for your own survival. So if they're feeding you this sort of intermittent schedule of conditioning for actions that you take, they really have the power to strengthen antisocial behavior and not strengthen social behavior, so pro-social behavior. So for example, they may not reward pro-social behavior at all, right? Which will never give you an incentive to engage in it, but reward antisocial behavior intermittently to make you try and try and try to get back that rush of dopamine when they praised you for that antisocial behavior. So you're conditioned to be antisocial without really knowing that you're being conditioned to be antisocial a lot of the time. And it's not only antisocial behavior towards others, it may be behavior that defeats you in some way. So for example, if you are, doing your homework and you're constantly doing your homework, an antisocial parent can give you praise for doing your homework and then turn around and, disparage you for doing your homework and not taking care of them in some way. For example, making them dinner or providing some sort of comfort for them, cooking for them or something. So they send a mixed message in order to strengthen bad behavior and weaken good behavior, right? I hope that makes sense. So, for example, they can even do this when you're cleaning, for example, right? So one time they can praise you for cleaning, and the next time they could say that you're doing a horrible job at cleaning. And then the next time they'll praise you for cleaning, and they'll say things like, wow, like you cleaned so well, I'm so proud of you. And then the next time when you clean exactly the same way as you did before, they're gonna tell you, I can't believe, you cleaned this. Look at this. There's a piece of dust over here. So they're gaslighting you into believing that your job is inadequate, but on top of that, they're encouraging you to clean and clean and clean until you get the house spotless, because you're searching for that reward, that positive conditioning, which is so rare in narcissistic parents. If the reward is rare and it's not always enforced, then the child will continuously try and try and try and try and break their back and break a sweat in order to get that reward. And the narcissistic parent is watching you try and try and try and try in order to get that one rush of dopamine for them, with glee in their face, because they understand that they're priming you to be antisocial and to engage with antisocial people. They will continuously try to throw, certain people out of your life, maybe through the use of intermittent reinforcement as well, because they may praise a friend and the next day disparage them, praise them and disparage them. And because you're seeking out their approval, you eliminate that friend from your life, because they're your main source of security and safety, and because praise is so rare from them. So the intermittent schedule is used, the hot and cold treatment and inconsistency of reward is used in order to enslave you to their opinion. And not only is intermittent reinforcement used, but the dopamine reward system is hijacked in your brain to make you dependent on the narcissist exclusively, to the exclusion of other people. They try to exclude other influences from coming into your life, positive influences, by hijacking the dopamine reward system. So you have a pairing of enforcing the behaviors that they want from you, not the behaviors that are good for you as a person, but that they want from you. They strengthen those behaviors through intermittent conditioning, and usually it's behaviors that serve them in some way directly, or they reward you inconsistently in order to make you understand that you have to work very hard in order to get a reward from them. And because you're looking for that reward, you're constantly trying for that reward. It's like a slot machine. You know that there's a reward, there's a carrot up there, and you're driving the engine in order to get that carrot, in order to get that one dopamine buzz. So normal parents and normal people, and this is very important for the children of narcissists to understand, normal people, especially when you're an adult, will continuously reinforce you and will not use intermittent reinforcement. Because if intermittent reinforcement is used positively, as I mentioned in the last video, it's used because the child is not developmentally advanced enough, to understand certain things. And you can't punish the child, but you can use an intermittent schedule to strengthen wanted behaviors. But adults don't need to be intermittently reinforced. If you find people around you that are giving you praise for a job well done 1 second and then giving you, negative comments about exactly the same job, right? Then that becomes a form of manipulation and not a form of communication, healthy communication. There's a big difference between using intermittent reinforcement in childhood and adulthood. and usually intermittent schedules are not supposed to be permissible. I'll give you a good example. I work in the dog care industry, and I was in I went to a client's house, and the client gives me $15 right when I walk in, and I don't know what she's giving me $15 for. And I take the $15, I'm kind of like taken aback. And I'm, in front of her, and she goes to me, she's like, listen, I'm gonna give you this for the favor that I'm gonna ask you. And I'm like, okay, what is the favor? So she gave me a reward right off the bat. Let's start with that. She gave me a reward, and I didn't know what it was for, right? So I'm incentivized to keep this reward, like my dopamine is up here because I just received a reward from somebody for just walking in through the door. And then she goes, my dog, I think he's injured, and I think that the dog walker that took him out with your company the night before, I think he was bitten by another dog, but I didn't want to get this guy in trouble because he's such a nice dog walker, and so I really didn't want to get him in trouble, so I didn't alert your company about it, but I think there's something wrong with the dog's lymph or something. And I'm like thinking, okay, well, maybe she wants me to, take the dog to the vet. And I go, I can definitely take the dog to the vet if you want me to. That's not a problem at all. And she's like, well, the thing is, I could take him to the vet myself, but WAG, that's the company I work for, has an insurance policy on dog injuries. And I'm like, yes, they have an insurance policy, but they only cover it when the dog is injured through the negligence of the walker. All right. I gave her the definition of the liability and the policy and everything. And she goes to me, she's like, well, it's really hot outside today, and you could just say that he lied down or collapsed or something. So at this point I understood what she was, trying to do. She was trying to get money from the company that I work for through illegitimate, means. And I immediately said, I'm like, but then you would still have to prove that I'm liable for the injury, right? So she incentivized me. She gave me a positive dopamine rush in the first half of the conversation, and she introduced her secret plan. And because I have this high dopamine rush, right, this incentive, my guard is supposedly supposed to be let down because there's a reward there. And then when I told her that no, I wasn't going to go through with it, I said sorry, right? She immediately changed her tune. She looked at me with her psychopathic eyes. She goes, no, don't say sorry. I asked you for a favor and you said no. So what this essentially is it's a cycling. It's a hot and cold treatment. It's a intermittent schedule of reinforcement, because there's a reward, and then there's good words, there's nice praise, there's everything, there's camaraderie. She even gave me money, okay? And then there's a quick change, right? From hot to cold, So In a person that has been trauma bonded, that sort of intermittent schedule, the discontinuity of the person's mood, the discontinuity of the person's tune, or the person's demeanor towards you as the target of narcissism, is supposed to, if a person has been trauma bonded, signal a higher rush of dopamine, a deeper incentive to please the abuser or the person that is trying to manipulate you. And if you don't know anything about trauma bonding, like if 5 years ago, right, I would have tried to appease this psychopath that was asking me to pretend that the dog was injured because I wasn't aware of trauma bonding. So I wasn't aware of intermittent conditioning or hot and cold treatment or anything like this. But presumably this psychopath does this on a continuous basis to different people. She pretends that she's very nice, very sweet, and then she just changes on them. And immediately I recognized it for what it was. Because I'm not invested with this person, I'm not in a relationship with them, and I'm aware of psychopathic priming, right? So immediately I said, I'm not comfortable. I put the $15 down and I walked out. And I called my company and reported her. And they thanked me from the bottom of their hearts because for pointing out a scammer, a person that's trying to pull one over on people. And look out for that. That's the only thing that I could say to you. Look out for people that are not continuous reinforcers in your adult life, that praise you 1 second, then demean you another second, then especially when it has to do with exactly the same, situation. If you're at work and if you're typing up a report and they praise you 1 second, and then a week later you type up a comparable report and they say, this is lacking. That is an intermittent schedule. That is them trying to get you to try to please them, to try to appease them even more than you would have had they given you a continuous schedule, of good job, you're doing good, you're a valuable employee, but I think that you can work on this, These are continuous markers, and you should look for that in adult relationships, where people give you criticism, but the criticism feels balanced. It doesn't feel like the person is going back on what they said or, quickly shifting their tune with you, because that is psychopathic and predatory behavior and a sign of manipulation, I hope you got something out of this video. I'm very happy to have walked out of that situation alive because I was waiting for her to stab me with a knife when I was walking out of the door, but luckily I'm alive. But I dodged a bullet, and you should dodge those bullets more often, and take manipulation seriously and see it for what it is, and stand your ground when you're put in situations that don't feel right for you, and use the hot and cold treatment and use the intermittent schedule. Those are very bad signs, and we can teach ourselves to see that for what it is, Microaggressions. It's all about looking at the microaggressions. Kisses.